Erev Tov Rabotai, we're continuing with our Mishna Yomi Mesechet Kilayim. We're up to Perik Chet Mishnah Hey. I want to dedicate today's Mishnah Le'ilui Nishmat Nerya ben Svetlana Aranbayev, the Bachur Yeshiva that unfortunately passed away at a young age. This Mishnah and the following Mishnah should be a Ilui Nishama, an elevation of his soul. Menuchato beGan Eden. Amen. Now, Rabotai, yesterday's Mishnah taught us that only mules with the same species of mother can be paired together to work or to mate. Generally, a person can determine whether a mule's mother was a horse or a donkey by examining certain of its features. And the Gemara tells us in Masechet Chulin on page 79a that a mule whose mother is a donkey has longer ears, a shorter tail, and a deeper voice than a mule whose mother is a horse. However, today's Mishnah is going to discuss a certain type of mule for which this is not true, meaning which these marks don't identify it. Now the Mishnah says, "Pirutiyot asurot." Two pirutiyot are forbidden to be paired up for work or to be mated together. What's a pirutiyot? Pirutiyot, the Rab tells us, min predot, it's a type of mule. She'en adam yechol la'amod alehen ulvarer al simanim. A person is not able to figure out, to determine based off the signs, ezemem imo chamo, bezemem imo sus, which mule's mother is a horse, which mule's mother is a donkey. Hilkach, therefore, as Suin Zaim said, they are forbidden to be paired with each other, either for mating or for work, because they don't have these identifiable features. Therefore, we suspect maybe their mothers might be from different species, and therefore we do not allow it to be paired up. V'aramach mutar, but a ramach is permitted to be paired together with any other ramach for work or for mating. We don't exactly know what a ramach is. We do know that it is an offspring of a female horse. So since the species of the animal is determined by its mother, all ramachs are considered to be horses and can be paired together. Now again, the Mefarshim tell us that even though, like I said, we don't know what a ramach is, since we for sure know that its mother is a horse, so all ramachs come from a mother that is a horse, and therefore they all consider one species that can be mated or work together. Now, Rabotai, in general, you should know all animals are divided into three categories. Number one, chaya, wild animal. That's a deer or a lion. Number two, behemah, domesticated animal. That's a cow or a sheep. And number three, shevetz, a creeping animal. That's a mouse or a weasel. Now, different laws apply to each category. The Mishnah now is going to discuss how certain animals are clarified. Specifically, in this first discussion, we're going to speak about whether a certain human-like animal is classified as a wild animal or a human with regards to the laws of Tumah. Now, just Rabotai, as another introduction, the carcass of a chaya, of a wild animal, which we said was a deer or a lion, it spreads Tumah, impurity, to any person or object that touches or carries it. Whereas a human corpse transmits Tumah in these ways, carrying or touching, and also through another process known as oil, roof. Meaning, if a person or object forms a roof over a corpse, or the corpse forms a roof over the person or object, or it is under the same roof as the corpse, the person or object become tameh. So the Mishnah now says, the adnei sadeh chaya. The adnei sadeh is a chaya. Therefore, its carcass transmits tumah as other carcasses of chayot do, not like human corpse do. Therefore, since the adnei sadeh is a chaya, its carcass transmits tumah only by being touched or moved, not by oil. What is a adnei sadeh? The Mefarshim explain that a adnei sadeh is an unusual animal. We don't know what it is today, but it's described as its face, hands, and legs resemble those of a human. It is attached to the ground by a cord from its navel, and it draws nourishment from the ground through the cord. If the cord is cut, it dies. The Tfilat Yisrael tells us that it's a type of ape, but again, the Rav says we don't know exactly what it is. So the Mishnah says, "Adnei sadeh chaya." This adnei sadeh is characterized as a chaya, therefore it can only transmit impurity by being touched or carried, not by oil, not by a roof. Rabbi Yossi Omer, however, Rabbi Yossi says, "Mitameot ba'on k'adam adnei sadeh also transmit tumah through a roof as human corpse do." And the Rab tells us, how do we know? The pasuk says, "V'chol asher yigal pnei sadeh," anything that's touched by way of the field, on the field, be'adam shegadal b'sadeh. Rabbi Yossi wants to learn out. It's even discussing an animal that grew in the field, meaning this animal which has the human type The human that grew in the field, not animal, the human that grew in the field, this type referring to this type of animal that has human characteristics. So again, the Tana Kama holds we characterize it like a chaya, a wild animal. Rabbi Yossi says we characterize it like a adam, like a person. The Mishnah is going to move on to classifying other animals. Hakupad, the chuldat, hasinayim chaya, the porcupine and the stone marten, which is a weasel-like animal, are chayot. Therefore, their carcasses transmit tumah following the rules of carcasses of chayot through moving or carrying or touching, but not through the oil. Chuldat sinayim, however, regarding this stone marten, this weasel-like animal, some Tanaim disagree. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Bet Shammai Omrim, Rabbi Yossi says that Bet Shammai say that the stone marten has some laws of chayan, some laws of sheretz, mitameh chizayit b'masa. An olive-sized piece of its carcass transmits tumah if it is carried like the carcass of a chaya. V'chadasha b'maga, and a lentil-sized piece of its carcass transmits tumah if it is touched like the carcass of a sheretz. And the Mefarshim explain, as a background, there are several differences between the tumah of a chaya, a wild animal, and the sheretz, a creepy creature. One difference is the size that you need to transmit tumah. A piece of a chaya's carcass transmits tumah only if it is at least the size of an olive, kazait. A piece of a sheretz's carcass, this creepy creature, it transmits tumah even if it's a much smaller size, like the size of a lentil. Another difference is the way that the carcass transmits tumah. A piece of chaya transmits tumah if it is touched, and even if it is carried without being touched, like in a box. While a piece of sheretz can transmit tumah only if it's physically touched. So the Mefarshim explain that Bet Shammai are uncertain whether this stone marten, this type of weasel, is a chaya or sheretz. Therefore, they give it the stringencies of both. Therefore, they say it transmits tumah even when you carry it, as long as it's the size of an olive, which is the stringency of a chaya, which we said even if you carry it in a box. And it conveys tumah even from a piece the size of a lentil when it's actually touched, which is the stringency of the sheretz. That is in Rabotai of Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Zayin Mishnah Vav is going to continue to identify various types of animals, teaching us whether they're behemot or chayot. Now, the Mishnah says, Shor bar min behema, the wild ox, which is a species of ox that lives in the wild. The wild ox is a type of behema, and therefore it's subject to the halachot that apply to behemot and don't apply to chayot. And an example is, there's two main differences between a wild animal and a domesticated animal. Number one, certain fats, which we call chelev, of behema may not be eaten, but those fats of the chaya, the wild animal, can be eaten. And number two, a person who slaughters a chaya, a wild animal or a bird, has to cover its blood with the earth, kisui adam, but one who slaughters a behema, a cow or a sheep, does not have to cover its blood with the earth. Therefore, the Tana Kama says that a wild ox is a behema, therefore you cannot eat its chelev, because again, chelev of behemot are asur, but its blood does not have to be covered, because again, the blood of a behema does not have to be covered after you slaughter it. The Rabbi Yossi Omer, but Rabbi Yossi says, min chaya, this wild ox is a type of a chaya, therefore its chelev is permitted like other chayot, but its blood has to be covered like other chayot. Now the Mefarshim explained to us, the Rav says, Rabbi Yossi holds that a wild ox is a different species than the domestic ox. Why? Because since its habitat is the wilderness, it is considered a chaya, a wild animal, whereas the Tana Kama holds that the wild ox is simply a domesticated ox that's living in the wilderness, therefore it's like a domestic ox, it's a behema, it's chelev, its fats are forbidden, certain fats are forbidden, but you do not have to cover the blood after you slaughter it. Kelev min chaya, the dog is a type of chaya. Rabbi Meir Omer min behema, but Rabbi Meir says that it's a type of behema. The difference between chayot and behemot that we mentioned above are not relevant to a dog. Why? Because it's not kosher, you can't eat its fats, and also there's no point in slaughtering it because you can't eat it, therefore you don't cover any blood. However, there are other distinctions regarding the dog. For example, if a person agrees to sell all of his chayot, do we include the dogs in that sale or do we not? That's dependent on what a dog is classified as. If a dog is classified as a chaya, it would be included in the sale with all the other chayot. However, if a dog is not a chaya, it would not be included in the sale with the other chayot. Rabbi Meir Omer min behema. So again, the Tana Kama says the dog is a type of chaya. Rabbi Meir says it's a type of behema. Chazir min behema, the pig is a type of behema. Arod min chaya, the arod, which is a kind of wild donkey, that's a type of chaya. Hapil v'akof min chaya, the elephant and the monkey are each a type of chaya. So again, basically the pig was bema, and the rest is wild donkey, and the elephant and the monkey were types of chayot. Again, the only halachic difference of whether calling it a chaya or bema is, again, if a person sells all his chayot to another person, his arods, his wild donkeys, his elephants and monkeys are included in the sale, but the pigs are not. And the Mishnah concludes this chapter, Ve'adam mutarim kulam, a person is permitted to work together with all of them, meaning with any type of animal, limshoch v'lacharosh v'manhig, whether to pull, to plow, or to lead. And the Mefarshim explain, what does it mean to lead? A person can harness himself with an animal to pull a load or to plow, and a person can lead a team that consists of another person and an animal, because the only prohibition of Kilayim is when you have two animals of different species, that's when you cannot work them together. However, an animal is allowed to work together with the human, and that we learn from the pasuk. The Rab tells us, the pasuk says, Dichtiv, lo tacharosh b'shor b'chamor, you're not allowed to plow with the ox and with the donkey, but the Gemara learns out, aval tachosh b'adam b'shor, you're allowed to plow with a person and ox, b'adam b'chamor, with a person and with a donkey. And again, Rabotai, just to say from earlier, when we had the machloket regarding a dog, the dog is a type of chaya. Rabbi Meir said it was a type of be'ema. The halakha does not follow Rabbi Meir. The halakha follows the Tanakama that is considered a chaya, and therefore, if you would say all my chayot are for sale, I'm selling all my chayot, the dog would be included in that sale. That is in Rabodev today's Mishna Yomi. Again, it was the Nishmat Nerya ben Svetlana Arambayev Minuchato Began Eden Baruch Adonai Leolam Amen v'Amen.